The manila envelope sat on my doorstep like a ticking bomb. No return address, just my name, Ivy, written in careful block letters. I almost stepped over it, my mind still focused on the morning's client sessions at the gym, but something made me pause. My name is Ivy, and 3 years ago I thought I had everything figured out. Successful fitness trainer, loving husband, beautiful son, and a life that looked perfect on Instagram. Funny how one envelope can shatter all that. I picked it up, noting its weight, the way it bulged slightly in the middle. Inside my kitchen, I dropped my gym bag and protein shake, sliding my finger under the flap. Photos spilled onto my granite countertop like autumn leaves, each one more devastating than the last. Julian, my husband, with another woman. Different locations, different outfits, same intimate gestures. His hand on her lower back at a restaurant I didn't recognize. Her head thrown back in laughter as they walked through a park. The final photo showed them entering a hotel, his wedding ring conspicuously absent. My phone buzzed. Julian's face lit up my screen. "Coming home late tonight, babe." Client dinner. I stared at his message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. 3 years of marriage, and I'd never once doubted him. Even when his mother Edith insisted we move into the family home to save money. Even when his sister Vivian made snide comments about my common background, I trusted Julian completely. "No problem," I typed back. "Noah and I will have dinner without you." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Thanks for understanding. Love you." I set my phone face down and walked to our son's room. Noah was napping, his little chest rising and falling peacefully. He was too young to understand what these photos meant, too innocent to know his father might be destroying our family. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number this time. "There's more you need to know. Meet me at Riverside Coffee tomorrow at 10 a.m. Come alone." I should have been angry, should have been screaming or crying. Instead, I felt oddly calm, like I was watching someone else's life implode. I picked up the photos, studying them more carefully. The woman was beautiful in an obvious way, exactly the type Julian's mother would approve of. Unlike me, with my athletic build and practical ponytail. The front door opened and I heard Edith's voice calling out, "Ivy? Where are you? The gardener needs direction about the rose bushes." I quickly slid the photos back into the envelope and tucked it into my gym bag. "Coming!" I called back, my voice steadier than I expected. Edith stood in the foyer, perfectly coiffed as always. "Really, dear, you should change out of those gym clothes before Noah wakes up. A mother should look presentable." "Of course," I said, forcing a smile. "I'll go change right now." As I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, I heard her on the phone. "Yes, Vivian, she's finally home." "No, Julian isn't here yet." "Yes, I'll tell him about dinner on Sunday." I closed my bedroom door and leaned against it, letting out a long breath. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., I'd meet my mysterious informant. Tomorrow, I'd find out just how deep this betrayal went. But tonight? Tonight, I'd play my part. I'd change into something presentable, smile through dinner with my mother-in-law, and tuck my son into bed. I'd kiss Julian when he came home, tasting his lies on his lips. Because if there's one thing being a fitness trainer has taught me, it's that the best results require patience, planning, and perfect form. And whatever was coming next, I intended to execute it flawlessly. Riverside Coffee was busier than I expected for a Tuesday morning. I dropped Noah at daycare early, telling myself it was just another normal day. Except normal days don't usually involve meeting mysterious strangers about your cheating husband. I spotted her immediately, the woman from the photos. She sat in a corner booth, stirring her coffee with mechanical precision. My stomach clenched, but I forced myself forward, sliding into the seat across from her. "I'm Caroline," she said, not looking up. "Julian's ex-fiancé." The word hit me like a slap. Julian had never mentioned being engaged before. Ex-fiancé? 3 years ago. Right before he met you, actually. She finally met my eyes. Edith arranged the whole thing. Old money, proper breeding, everything she wanted for her precious son. I thought about the photos. But you're still seeing him. No. Caroline's laugh was bitter. Those photos are from 3 years ago, right before our wedding. I found out he was seeing you, confronted him, and he called everything off. She pulled out her phone, showing me the timestamp metadata on the photos. Edith never forgave either of us, him for choosing you, me for not fighting harder to keep him. My relief about the photos lasted exactly 3 seconds before the implications sank in. Why show me now? Because yesterday I overheard something at the country club. Edith and Vivian were talking about Julian's investment opportunity. They're planning to drain your savings, Ivy. All of it. The pieces started falling into place. Julian's recent hints about a can't-miss business venture, his mother's sudden interest in my career success, the way Vivian kept bringing up my impressive client list at family dinners. How much do they think I have? Enough to cover Julian's gambling debts. That's what ended our engagement. I discovered he'd lost almost everything. The family fortune, his trust fund, all of it. Caroline's hands trembled slightly. Edith covered it up, but she can't keep doing it. They need fresh money. My phone buzzed. Julian, did you get a chance to look at those investment papers I left on your desk? I stared at the message, remembering the thick folder he'd given me yesterday. I hadn't opened it yet, too distracted by the photos. There's more, Caroline said quietly. The house, it's not actually in Julian's name. Edith still owns everything. If you sign those papers, you'll be responsible for all their debts, but you'll have no legal claim to anything. The coffee shop door chimed. Vivian walked in, her designer handbag swinging. She froze when she saw us, her perfectly painted smile cracking. Ivy? What a surprise. Her voice carried across the cafe. And Caroline. How interesting. Caroline stood quickly. Think about what I said, she murmured, then brushed past Vivian without acknowledgement. Vivian slid into the vacant seat, her expression concerned. You shouldn't trust anything that woman says. She's been bitter ever since Julian chose you. Did he choose me? I asked quietly. Or did he just need someone with a steady income? Something flickered in Vivian's eyes, surprise, maybe even respect. You're smarter than you look. She leaned forward. Listen, whatever Caroline told you, just remember family comes first. Julian needs you right now. We all do. I thought about Noah, about the life I wanted for him. Yes, I said slowly. Family does come first. Vivian's smile returned, triumphant. She didn't notice my hands under the table, sending a quick text to my bank. Freeze all accounts immediately. Possible fraud. I should go, I said, standing. I have clients waiting. Of course. Vivian's voice was honey-sweet. Oh, and don't forget about those investment papers. Julian's really counting on your support. I walked out of the coffee shop, my mind racing. They thought they had me cornered, this family of wolves in designer clothing. But they'd forgotten something crucial. I hadn't survived as a female fitness trainer in a male-dominated industry by being naive. The game they wanted to play? I could play it better. And I had something they didn't, nothing left to lose. That evening, I sat at my desk, staring at Julian's investment papers while Noah played with his blocks nearby. The documents looked legitimate enough, glossy brochures for a luxury resort development, projected returns that seemed too good to be true. 'Cause they were. My laptop pinged with an email from my bank. Count frozen as requested. I'd need to visit in person to make any changes. Perfect. Mommy, look. Noah held up his tower of blocks, beaming. It's tall like Daddy. The front door opened and Julian's footsteps echoed through the hall. I quickly slid the papers into my desk drawer. There's my boy. Julian swept Noah up, making airplane noises. He looked at me, his smile faltering slightly. Did you get a chance to look at those papers? Actually, I tried to transfer the money, but there seems to be an issue with the bank. I watched his face carefully. They need me to come in person. Something flickered in his eyes. Panic? I can go with you tomorrow. Make sure everything goes smoothly. That won't be necessary. I stood up, stretching. I already made an appointment. Vivian offered to watch Noah. Julian set our son down, his movements suddenly precise. You saw Vivian today? At Riverside Coffee. Strange coincidence, running into her there. Temperature in the room seemed to drop. Julian's phone buzzed, probably Vivian warning him. He glanced at it but didn't answer. Ivy, about Caroline. Your ex-fiancé? The one you never mentioned? I kept my voice light, conscious of Noah playing nearby. The one your mother still compares me to at every family dinner? It wasn't serious. He stepped closer, reaching for my hand. You know you're the only one who matters to me. You and Noah. His touch felt different now, knowing what I knew. Like a snake's scale, smooth but cold. Noah, sweetie, I called out. Time to get ready for bed. But Daddy just got home. It's okay, champ, Julian said. I'll read you an extra long story tomorrow. As I tucked Noah in, Julian's phone buzzed again. And again. I heard him in the hallway, his voice low but urgent. Mother, now isn't a good time. When I came back downstairs, Edith was in our living room, impeccably dressed despite the late hour. Ivy, dear. We need to talk about these investment papers. Mother, Julian warned. No, Julian. This affects all of us. Edith's smile was razor sharp. Ivy needs to understand what family means. Family? I laughed, surprising all of us. Like how you covered up Julian's gambling debts. Or how you're trying to trap me into taking responsibility for them. Julian went pale. Edith's smile didn't waver, but her hands tightened on her designer purse. Caroline told you. It wasn't a question. That spiteful girl never could keep her mouth shut. She didn't have to tell me everything. I moved to my desk, pulled out the investment papers. I had these reviewed by a lawyer this afternoon. Interesting structure, all the liability, none of the ownership. Very clever. You went to a lawyer? Julian's voice cracked. I also spoke to the bank. I turned to Edith. Did you know Julian's been transferring money from our joint account to cover his gambling? $5,000 last week alone. Edith's composure slipped just for a moment. She turned to Julian. You're still gambling? The look on Julian's face, caught between his mother and his wife, between his addiction and his lies, almost made me pity him. Almost. I can explain, he started, but his phone buzzed again. This time, I was close enough to see the screen. Not Vivian. Not his mother. A message from Amanda with a heart emoji. Missing you already. Last night was amazing. The silence that followed was deafening. I think, I said quietly, you both should leave. Ivy, Julian reached for me. Now. My voice didn't shake. Before I wake up Noah and tell him exactly why his father is leaving. They left, Edith's heels clicking on the hardwood, Julian's shoulders slumped in defeat. I locked the door behind them, then sat on the stairs, listening to Noah's soft breathing from upstairs. Tomorrow I'd go to the bank. Tomorrow I'd start untangling myself from their web of lies. But tonight I allowed myself one moment of pure, clarifying rage. They wanted to play games with my life, my money, my son's future? Fine. Game on. The bank manager's expression said everything before she even opened my account records. Mrs. Harrison, there seems to be a problem. I already knew what she'd found. I'd spent all night reviewing our finances, tracking Julian's systematic drain of our accounts. But hearing the numbers out loud made my hands shake. The transfers started small, she explained, sliding papers across her desk. 2,000 here, 5,000 there. But last month alone, she pointed to a figure that made my stomach turn. $50,000. Gone. I'd like to close all joint accounts, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, and open new ones in my name only. As she processed the paperwork, my phone lit up with texts from Julian. Where are you? Mother's worried. Please come home. We can fix this. The last one made me laugh, a sharp, bitter sound that startled the bank manager. Sorry, I said. Just remembered something funny. Like how Julian had convinced me to put my fitness business earnings into our joint account. For tax purposes, he'd said. For our future. Walking out of the bank, I felt lighter. Dangerous. Free. I had an appointment with my lawyer next, but first I needed to pick up Noah from Ivy. Grant, Vivian's husband, stood by my car. In 3 years of family dinners and forced holidays, he'd barely spoken 10 words to me. Now here he was, looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit. They sent you to talk to me? No. He glanced around the parking lot. They don't know I'm here. Listen, there's something you need to see. He held out a USB drive. Financial records. The real ones. From before you married Julian. I stared at the small device. Why are you helping me? Because Vivian. He swallowed hard. She's pregnant. And I won't let my child grow up in this mess. I took the drive, watching him walk away. At my lawyer's office, the documents told a story that made my blood run cold. The gambling debts weren't just Julian's. The entire family was drowning in them, using new loans to pay off old ones, creating a pyramid scheme of desperation. My phone buzzed again. Edith this time. Family dinner tonight. Non-negotiable. Perfect. I drove home, finding Julian waiting in the driveway. He looked terrible, unshaven, shirt wrinkled. Good. Where's Noah? I asked before he could speak. Mother has him. Ivy, please let me explain about Amanda. You can explain at dinner. I walked past him into the house. I'm sure your mother would love to hear about her too. He grabbed my arm. Don't. Mother can't handle any more stress right now. Can't handle the truth, you mean? I pulled away. Like how you're still gambling. Or how you've been stealing from me. Borrowing, he corrected quickly. I was going to pay it back. The resort development is a scam. I turned to face him. Just like our marriage. Something dark crossed his face. You don't mean that. Actually, I do. I headed upstairs to change. See you at dinner, honey. In our bedroom, I packed a small bag, essential documents, some clothes for Noah and me, the USB drive. Just in case. Then I dressed carefully, choosing the red dress Edith always said was too bold for family occasions. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from Grant. Be careful tonight. Vivian's been making calls. I smiled at my reflection, applying red lipstick with steady hands. They thought they had me cornered, the troublesome wife who needed to be managed, controlled, bled dry. They didn't realize they'd created their own worst nightmare, a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Tonight's dinner would be interesting. I had the truth, the evidence, and most importantly, I had their precious family reputation in my hands. Let them try to stop me. Edith's dining room felt like a stage set, crystal glasses catching the chandelier light, silver gleaming on starched white linen. Noah sat between Vivian and Edith, happily munching on the chicken nuggets they'd specially ordered for him. My son, the only person they bothered to accommodate. More wine, dear. Edith's smile was razor-sharp as she lifted the bottle. No, thank you. I kept my glass full but untouched. I need a clear head for my morning clients. Ah, yes, your little exercise classes. She set the bottle down with a precise clink. Though I heard you've been doing more than just teaching lately. Julian stiffened beside me. I smiled. News travels fast. Grant mentioned something about a bank visit? Vivian's voice dripped concern. Is everything all right? Perfectly fine. I cut into my untouched steak. Just some routine account maintenance. Speaking of maintenance, Julian, did you tell your mother about Amanda? The silence was absolute. Even Noah looked up, sensing the tension. Amanda. Edith's knuckles whitened around her fork. Julian's new investment partner. I took a deliberate sip of water. They've been working very closely together. Noah, sweetie, Vivian stood quickly. Let's go watch your favorite show in the den. But I want to stay with Mommy. Go on, baby, I said softly. Just for a little while. The moment Noah left, Edith's facade cracked. What game are you playing, Ivy? Game? I pulled out my phone, sliding it across the table. Like the game where Julian empties our accounts for his gambling? Or the one where you try to trap me into taking on the family's debts? You ungrateful, Vivian started, but Grant caught her arm. Let her speak, he said quietly. I stood, walking to the antique sideboard where Edith kept her precious family photos. 3 years I've tried to fit into this family. 3 years of criticism, manipulation, and lies. I picked up a frame Julian and me on our wedding day. But you know what's funny? You were so busy trying to control me, you never noticed I was watching too. Ivy, please, Julian reached for me. Whatever you think you know. I know everything. I set the photo down hard enough to crack the glass. The gambling, the affairs, the fraud. Every loan, every scheme, every lie. You have no proof, Edith said, but her voice wavered. I laughed. Check your email. All of you. I sent quite an interesting package about an hour ago. Bank records, photos, everything. A copy to the police too, just in case. You wouldn't dare. Vivian's face was pale. Think about Noah. I am thinking about Noah. My voice finally broke. I'm thinking about how he deserves better than growing up in this poison. Better than watching his father gamble away his future while his grandmother orchestrates cover-ups. Mother, Julian's voice was desperate. Tell her it's not true. But Edith just sat there, her perfect posture finally crumbling. How did you get those records? Does it matter? I walked to the door. Noah. Time to go home, baby. You can't take him. Julian stood. This is his home. Actually, I pulled out another paper from my bag, according to our new custody agreement filed this afternoon. I can. Emergency temporary custody, granted due to evidence of financial fraud and unsafe living conditions. Noah came running in, Grant following with his backpack. Our eyes met briefly, his apologetic, mine grateful. But where will you go? Vivian stammered. Away from here. I took Noah's hand. Oh, and Julian? Amanda called. Apparently, she's pregnant too. Congratulations. The last thing I saw as we walked out was Edith's face crumpling, Vivian's hand flying to her own pregnant belly, and Julian, my charming, lying husband, finally running out of masks to wear. In the car, Noah yawned. Mommy, why didn't we finish dinner? Because sometimes, baby, I started the engine, watching the grand house shrink in my rearview mirror. Leaving the table is the healthiest choice you can make. My phone started buzzing with their calls and messages, but I didn't answer. They'd taken enough of my time, my money, my trust. But they wouldn't take another second of my future. Or my son's. 3 weeks into our new life, I woke to banging on my apartment door. Noah stirred in the makeshift bed beside me. We were still sleeping in the living room, waiting for furniture to arrive. Police. Open up. My heart stopped. Through the peephole, I saw 2 officers and Julian, his face a mask of concern. Perfect. Officers, I opened the door, keeping the chain on. Is something wrong? Ma'am, we have reports of child endangerment. We need to check on Noah's welfare. Behind them, Julian's concerned facade cracked into a slight smirk. Of course. When manipulation failed, he'd try force. I let them in, watching as they took in our sparse living room, the air mattresses, the takeout containers, Noah's toys scattered across the floor. It looked bad, I knew that. Exactly as Julian had planned. "Noah, baby, come say hi to the officers." My son peeked out from behind me, thumb in mouth, a habit he'd picked up since we left. "Daddy." "Hey, champ." Julian stepped forward, but I blocked his path. "My lawyer," I said to the officers, pulling out my phone. "I need to call her." "Of course," one officer nodded, while his partner spoke quietly into his radio. Julian moved closer, his voice low. "You really think anyone will believe you over me? A single mother living like this?" He gestured at our temporary setup. "While I have a proper home, family support, stability?" "You mean the stability of gambling debts? Or the family support of lies and fraud?" "Prove it." His smile was cold. "Those records you threatened us with? Inadmissible in court." Grant made sure of that before he handed them over. My stomach dropped. Grant's help had been too convenient, too perfect. Another manipulation. The officers finished their inspection, making notes about the living conditions. I could see it through their eyes, the missing furniture, the makeshift beds, the chaos of a hasty move. All while Julian stood there in his perfect suit, radiating concern and stability. "Mrs. Harrison," the older officer said, "we'll need you to come down to the station. There are some questions." A knock interrupted him. Through the still open door walked Caroline, carrying a stack of files. "Sorry I'm late," she said, all business. "I'm Mrs. Harrison's attorney, and I believe you officers will find these interesting." She handed them each a folder. Certified bank records showing Mr. Harrison's gambling losses. Court admissible evidence of financial fraud. And she smiled at Julian. DNA test results proving Mr. Harrison's paternity of my unborn child. Julian's face went ash-white. "My client," Caroline continued, "has full documentation of her income, rental agreement, and Noah's new school registration. The temporary living conditions are just that, temporary. The furniture arrives tomorrow." The officers reviewed the documents, their expressions shifting. Julian started to speak, but Caroline cut him off. "Oh, and one more thing." She pulled out her phone, playing a recording of Julian's voice. "Those records you threatened us with? Inadmissible in court. Grant made sure of that." "You recorded me?" Julian sputtered. "No," I said quietly. "I did. Just now." Funny how people reveal themselves when they think they've won. The officers exchanged looks. "Mr. Harrison, we'll need you to come with us. Making false reports is a serious offense." As they led Julian out, Caroline turned to me. "You okay?" I looked around our sparse apartment, at Noah playing quietly with his toys, unaware of how close we'd come to losing everything. "Why help me?" I asked. "After everything." "Because 3 years ago I was you. Except I didn't fight back." She touched her pregnant belly. "This time I am." After they left, I sat beside Noah, watching him stack blocks into wobbly towers. My phone buzzed with a text from Grant. "I'm sorry. They threatened Vivian, the baby." I had to. Another buzz, Edith. "This isn't over." She was right. It wasn't over. But for the first time since this started, I wasn't afraid. They'd thrown everything they had at me, and I was still standing. Tomorrow, the furniture would arrive. Tomorrow, we'd start building our new life for real. But tonight, watching Noah play in our imperfect temporary home, I realized something important. Sometimes rock bottom has a foundation you can build on. The Harrison family mansion loomed before me, its windows dark except for Edith's study. 6 months had passed since that night with the police, and now I was back, not as Julian's wife or Edith's daughter-in-law, but as their creditor. I adjusted my blazer, checking that the USB drive was still in my pocket. Noah was safe with Caroline, probably playing with her newborn daughter. The thought gave me strength as I rang the doorbell. Grant opened it, looking haunted. "They're all in the study." "How convenient." I stepped past him. "Everyone I need to see, all in one place." The study door was ajar, voices drifting out. Edith's sharp tone, Julian's pleading, Vivian's barely contained hysteria. "We can't sell the house," Edith was saying. "It's been in the family for generations." I pushed the door open. "Actually, you can. And you will." They froze like actors in a tableau, Edith behind her massive desk, Julian pacing, Vivian perched on the leather sofa, her pregnancy now obvious. "You have no right to be here," Edith started, but I cut her off. "I have every right." I placed a folder on her desk. "As the majority holder of your debt." Julian stopped pacing. "What?" "It's amazing what you can buy when a family's desperate. I've spent the last 6 months acquiring your loans, your mortgages, everything." I smiled. "You wanted my money? Now you have my attention." "You vindictive little..." Vivian stood, but Grant caught her arm. "Let her speak," he said quietly. "Oh, now you want to hear me?" I pulled out the USB drive. "Funny, because I've been listening to all of you for years. Every criticism, every manipulation, every lie." I turned to Julian. "Including your conversations with Amanda about how to bleed me dry." "I never," Julian started. "Save it." I connected the drive to Edith's computer. "Everything's here, the gambling, the fraud, the conspiracies. But that's not why I'm here." Edith's face had gone pale as she scanned the files. "What do you want?" "Simple. Sign over the house and assets to my holding company and I'll restructure your debt. You can stay here as tenants. Under my terms." "You can't be serious," Vivian laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Or," I continued, "I can call in all the loans tomorrow." "Your choice." Julian moved toward me, his charm switching on like a light. "Ivy, sweetheart, we can talk about this." "Don't." My voice cracked like a whip. 3 years, Julian. 3 years I tried to be part of this family. And you know what I learned? The only thing you people understand is power. "You're just like us," Edith said softly. "Using money to control people." "No." I met her eyes. "I'm protecting my son from becoming like you. Noah will grow up knowing his worth isn't measured by his bank account or family name." "And what about my grandchild?" Vivian's hand rested on her belly. "Would you leave them homeless?" "Sign the papers and no one has to leave. But things will change." I pulled out a pen. "Starting with how you treat people." Silence fell. I could see them calculating just as they'd calculated how to use me years ago. Finally, Edith reached for the pen. "Mother, no." Julian protested. "Enough, Julian." Edith's hand shook as she signed. "We did this." All of us. One by one they signed, Vivian with tears, Julian with rage, Grant with what looked like relief. "It's done," I said, collecting the papers. "The lawyers will contact you about the new arrangements." As I turned to leave, Edith spoke again. "Was it worth it? This revenge?" I paused at the door. "This isn't revenge, Edith. It's protection from yourselves." I looked at each of them. "Maybe now you'll learn what family really means." Walking out, I heard Vivian start to cry, Julian cursing, Edith's heavy silence. But for the first time since I'd entered their lives, I felt clean. Free. My phone buzzed, a photo from Caroline of Noah playing with her daughter, both laughing. This was what mattered. Not revenge, not power, but building something better for the next generation. Let the Harrisons keep their mansion. I had everything I needed. 1 year later, I stood in front of the Harrison mansion, watching the movers carry out Edith's antiques. Noah played on the front lawn, his laughter mixing with the sound of another child, Vivian's daughter, Emma, crawling after him on a blanket while Grant watched them both. "Everything's packed." Caroline appeared beside me, her own daughter strapped to her chest. "Edith's waiting in the study." I nodded, taking a deep breath. This wasn't the ending I'd imagined when I'd first walked through these doors as Julian's bride, but maybe it was the one we all needed. The study looked smaller now, its shelves empty. Edith sat at her desk. No, my desk now, writing something. The last of the paperwork? I asked. She looked up, her face softer than I remembered. A letter. For Noah. She held it out. For when he's older. To explain. Everything. I took it, noting how her hands trembled. I heard Julian's doing better. The gambling therapy. 6 months sober. A ghost of pride crossed her face. Amanda's baby helped. Gave him something to fight for. Like Noah did for me. Silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Edith stood, smoothing her skirt with dignified precision. I never told you why I was so hard on you, she said quietly. I saw myself in you. The determination, the independence. I had that once before I let this house, this name, become everything. She gestured around the study. I thought I was protecting Julian from my mistakes. Instead, I turned him into his father. And now, she smiled sadly. Now I'm moving into a 2-bedroom condo, learning to live without walls of photographs, pretending we were perfect. She moved to the window, watching Noah and Emma play. Sometimes losing everything shows you what you actually had. A noise at the door made us turn. Vivian stood there, Emma's diaper bag over her shoulder. The movers need the keys, she said, then hesitated. We're still on for Sunday? Noah seemed excited about the playground. As long as you remember the rules, I said firmly. No manipulation, no games, no comparing the children. Vivian recited, then added softly, just family. Whatever that means now. I handed Edith the study keys. She took them, then surprised me by pulling out an old photograph from her purse. Found this while packing, she said. Showed a young woman in workout clothes standing proudly in front of a small gym. Me at your age. Before I decided status mattered more than strength. I studied the woman in the photo, seeing echoes of myself, of Vivian, even of Caroline. All of us fighting for something we thought we needed, only to find different battles worth winning. Keep it, Edith said. Remind Noah that his grandmother wasn't always a nightmare mother-in-law. She actually laughed, a real laugh, not the polished society chuckle I'd grown to hate. Something like that. Outside, Noah's voice carried through the window. Mommy! Emma did it. She's walking. We rushed to watch as Vivian's daughter took wobbly steps toward Noah, Grant filming with his phone while Caroline cheered. A moment of pure joy, untainted by expectations or facades. You did the right thing, Edith said quietly. Breaking our cycle, making us face ourselves. It wasn't about breaking anything, I replied, watching Noah help Emma balance. It was about building something better. As Edith left for the last time, I opened her letter to Noah. The final lines caught my eye. Your mother taught us that true strength isn't in what you own or control, but in knowing when to let go. Remember that, and remember that family, real family, is built on love, not fear. Even if it takes some of us a lifetime to learn the difference. I folded the letter, tucking it away for Noah's future. Outside, my son was teaching Emma to play pat-a-cake, their laughter echoing through the empty house. Not every broken thing needs to be fixed, I realized. Sometimes it just needs to be rebuilt, differently but stronger. And sometimes the best revenge is simply living well, surrounded by the truth of who you are. Call came at 2:47 a.m., jolting me from a deep sleep. My sister's ringtone, the one I'd specifically set to ignore, kept chiming persistently. For 6 rings, I finally answered, if only to stop the noise. What is it, Celeste? Through broken sobs, my sister's voice crackled over the line. Nora, I need help. Please. We have nowhere else to go. My name is Nora, and I should have let that call go to voicemail. 20 years of cleaning up Celeste's messes had taught me better, but old habits die hard when it comes to family. What do you mean we? I asked, already dreading the answer. The boys and me. We left Grant. Things got complicated. Can we stay with you? Just for a few days until I figure things out? I sat up in bed, switching on my bedside lamp. The digital clock's red numbers seemed to mock me as I contemplated my response. My perfectly ordered life was about to be disrupted again. Celeste, I have patients early tomorrow. I can't just. Please, she cut in, her voice breaking. Oliver and Lucas are sleeping in the car. We've been driving for hours. That got my attention. You're in your car? Where exactly? Your driveway. I walked to my window and pulled back the curtain. Sure enough, there was Celeste's beat-up Honda Civic parked crooked across my driveway. In the dim streetlight, I could make out two small shapes huddled in the back seat. Jesus Christ, Celeste. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass. Come inside before someone calls the police. 5 minutes later, I stood in my kitchen watching my sister herd her exhausted sons through the door. Oliver, 10 years old and already showing signs of his mother's dramatic flair, clutched a ratty backpack to his chest. 7-year-old Lucas trailing behind him, thumb firmly planted in his mouth, a habit I thought he'd broken years ago. Celeste looked worse than I'd ever seen her, and that was saying something. Her normally perfect makeup was smeared, dark circles under her eyes making her look haunted. She'd lost weight since I'd last seen her at Mom's funeral 3 months ago. The guest room is made up, I said, keeping my voice low. The boys can take the pull-out couch in my office. Thank you, Celeste whispered, but wouldn't meet my eyes. That's when I knew this wasn't just another of her typical crises. Something was seriously wrong. I helped get the boys settled, noting how they had barely any belongings with them. Oliver kept watching his mother with worried eyes, while Lucas fell asleep almost instantly on the couch. Back in the kitchen, I found Celeste sitting at my counter, staring into space. Want to tell me what's really going on? She jumped slightly, as if she'd forgotten I was there. It's complicated. It always is with you. I started making tea chamomile, the kind our mother used to make when we were upset. Does Grant know where you are? No. She accepted the mug with trembling hands. And he can't find out. Promise me, Nora. What did you do? Why do you assume I did something? Her defensive tone was all too familiar. Maybe he's the one who. Because I know you, Celeste. And because you're hiding something. I can see it in your face. She took a shaky sip of tea, then set the mug down carefully. You're right. There's something I haven't told anyone. Not even Grant. But I can't. Not tonight. Please, can we just sleep? I wanted to push harder, to demand answers. But looking at her now, I saw something I'd never seen in my little sister before. Genuine fear. Fine. But tomorrow we talk. Really talk. No more games, no more half-truths. Deal. She nodded, relief flooding her features. As I watched her disappear into the guest room, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just invited chaos back into my life. What I didn't know then was that this night would change everything, not just for Celeste and her boys, but for all of us. And that the revenge my sister was running from would eventually find its way to my doorstep. Morning arrived with the subtle chaos I'd been dreading. I found Oliver and Lucas sprawled across my living room floor, surrounded by scattered Lego pieces, while cartoons blared from the TV at a volume that made my teeth ache. Boys, I called out, lowering the volume, breakfast in 5 minutes. And please pick up these toys before someone steps on them. Neither child moved. Oliver kept building his creation while Lucas continued watching the screen, thumb firmly planted in his mouth. The scene was so different from my usual quiet mornings with Ava, who was always organized and ready for school without prompting. Speaking of Ava, my daughter appeared in the kitchen doorway, her face a mix of confusion and annoyance. Mom, why is Aunt Celeste sleeping in our guest room? It's complicated, honey. Family emergency. I started cracking eggs into a bowl, trying to maintain some semblance of our normal routine. Where is your aunt now? Still sleeping. Like her kids should be, instead of trashing our living room at 7 in the morning. I shot her a warning look. Ava. What? I'm just saying what you're thinking. She grabbed her lunch from the fridge. I've got debate club after school, remember? Don't wait up. The front door closed behind her with more force than necessary. I couldn't blame her. This was exactly the kind of disruption I'd always protected my kids from. Kind that seemed to follow Celeste everywhere. Something smells amazing. Celeste appeared in the doorway, looking marginally better than last night but still wearing yesterday's clothes. Boys, come eat breakfast. Neither child moved. Oliver. Lucas. Now, please. Till nothing. I watched as she shrugged it off, helping herself to coffee. The old familiar irritation bubbled up, the same feeling I'd had watching our mother clean up Celeste's messes, make excuses for her behavior, praise her potential while ignoring her actions. They need structure, I said, keeping my voice neutral as I plated the eggs. Consistent consequences. They're just tired from the drive. And traumatized, probably. Celeste sipped her coffee. Speaking of which, I need to figure out getting them enrolled in school here. I nearly dropped the spatula. Here? I thought this was temporary. Well, she wouldn't meet my eyes. Grant knows all our usual spots. And the boys love it here with their favorite aunt, don't you, sweeties? Oliver finally looked up. Dad's going to find us anyway. He always does. The resignation in his voice made my stomach clench. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from my receptionist. First patient arrived early. Everything okay? I have to get to work, I said, grabbing my keys. We'll talk about school and everything else tonight. But Celeste, you need to. I know. Clean up, keep the boys quiet, stay out of sight. I remember the rules from last time. 3 years ago, when she'd shown up after totaling Grant's car and emptying their joint account. She'd stayed 2 weeks before disappearing without a word, leaving me to explain to a heartbroken Oliver why his mother had gone. There won't be a this time if you pull that again, I said quietly, so the boys couldn't hear. I mean it, Celeste. No more games. She nodded, but something in her expression made me uneasy. I'd seen that look before, right before she'd forged Mom's signature on college withdrawal papers, right before she'd borrowed my car and disappeared for a month, right before she'd announced her pregnancy at my wedding reception. As I drove to work, my mind kept circling back to Oliver's words about Grant. There was something off about this whole situation. Celeste had run from Grant before, but never like this, never in the middle of the night, never with such fear in her eyes. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, but the message notification made my blood run cold. Dr. Caldwell, this is Detective Martinez. We need to speak with you regarding your sister's whereabouts. Please call back as soon as possible. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, wondering what exactly I'd invited into my home this time. I returned home that evening to find my house eerily quiet. Too quiet. The boys' Legos were still scattered across the floor, half-eaten sandwiches abandoned on the coffee table. Celeste's purse lay open on the kitchen counter, her phone next to it. Detective Martinez's voicemail had haunted me all day. I called back during lunch, but only reached his voicemail. Now, standing in my silent house, that uneasy feeling returned tenfold. Celeste, I called out, moving toward the guest room. Boys. A muffled sob from upstairs stopped me. Following the sound, I found Oliver huddled in my home office closet, clutching something to his chest. Oliver? Where's your mom? He looked up, tears streaming down his face. She said not to tell. My heart dropped. Tell what? Instead of answering, he held out what he'd been holding, a manila envelope, stuffed with what looked like hundreds of thousands in cash. I found it in Mom's bag, he whispered. She saw me looking and got really mad. Then she took Lucas to get ice cream. That was hours ago. I sat down next to him, my legs suddenly weak. How long ago exactly? After lunch. She said they'd be right back, but he wiped his nose with his sleeve. Dad always says Mom takes things that aren't hers. Is that what this is? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Detective Martinez. Dr. Caldwell, his voice was grave. We need to discuss the incident at Riverside Community Bank yesterday. Your sister was identified on security footage during an armed robbery. A security guard was shot. The room spun. I gripped the doorframe, trying to steady myself. Is he? He's in critical condition. Dr. Caldwell, if you're harboring your sister, you need to understand the severity. I don't know where she is, I cut in, watching Oliver's face crumple. She took her younger son for ice cream hours ago and hasn't returned. I just found evidence that might be related to your investigation. There was a pause. Stay where you are. We're sending officers to your location. I hung up and pulled Oliver close, feeling him shake against me. It's going to be okay, I lied, wondering how many times Celeste had fed him the same empty promise. 30 minutes later, my house was crawling with police. They photographed the envelope of cash, took statements, and asked endless questions about Celeste's behavior and possible destinations. I answered mechanically, my mind stuck on one horrifying thought. My sister had used her 7-year-old son as a shield for her getaway. Mom! Ava appeared in the doorway, eyes wide at the scene before her. What's happening? Where's Lucas? Question hit me like a physical blow. Lucas. Sweet, thumb-sucking Lucas, who'd already been through so much. Now just another pawn in Celeste's game. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. I'm sorry. Take care of Oliver. Lucas is safer with me. That's from her, I told the detective, hands shaking as I handed over my phone. She's not coming back this time, is she? He gave me a sympathetic look. We'll find them, Dr. Caldwell. But right now, we need to discuss temporary custody arrangements for Oliver. Oliver, who hadn't left my side since I found him, gripped my hand tighter. He stays with me, I said firmly. I'm his aunt. I'll call my lawyer tonight and start the paperwork. Later, after the police left and Ava helped Oliver set up properly in the guest room, I sat alone in my kitchen. The same kitchen where, just 2 nights ago, Celeste had promised no more games. The same kitchen where, 20 years earlier, our mother had assured me Celeste would grow out of her problems if we just gave her enough chances. My phone buzzed again. Grant. Nora? Is it true? The police just called me about Celeste and the bank. It's true, I said, my voice hollow. She's gone. She took Lucas. But Oliver. I swallowed hard. Oliver's safe. He's with me. The silence on the other end spoke volumes. Finally, Grant cleared his throat. Keep him safe, Nora. Don't let her near him again. No matter what she says, no matter what she promises. Some people don't deserve second chances. I looked at the empty envelope on my counter, evidence tag still attached, and realized he was right. Some things can't be forgiven. And some people don't want to be saved. A week after Celeste disappeared with Lucas, I found myself sitting across from Grant in my kitchen, both of us staring at a stack of custody paperwork. TV hummed in the background where Oliver watched cartoons with Ava, the same ones he'd watched that first morning. Except now, he watched them alone. The police found her car abandoned at a bus station in Memphis, Grant said, running a hand through his graying hair. Security footage shows her and Lucas boarding a bus to New Orleans, but after that... He shrugged, the gesture heavy with defeat. I pushed a mug of coffee toward him. There's something you're not telling me. He pulled out his phone, pulled up a news article. The bank robbery wasn't her first. There were others spread across 3 states. Different names, different disguises, but it was her. He paused. And she wasn't alone. The photo showed grainy security footage of Celeste with a man, both wearing baseball caps and sunglasses. Something about his stance, the way he held himself. That's not you, I said slowly, but he looks like you. My brother Marcus. He got out of prison 6 months ago. Grant's knuckles went white around his coffee mug. I should have seen it coming. He and Celeste always had a connection. The implications hit me like a punch to the gut. All those times Celeste had run to Grant's family gatherings without him, claiming she was keeping the peace after their fights. All those late-night phone calls she claimed were about family emergencies. Does Oliver know about his uncle? No. Marcus went to prison when Oliver was 2. We told the boys he moved to Alaska. Grant's voice cracked. Now he's got Lucas. My baby boy is with a convicted felon and a mother who, he stopped, glancing toward the living room. My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Tell Grant to back off. Lucas is fine. We're all fine. I showed Grant the message. His face hardened. She's using our son as leverage. Again. Before I could respond, Oliver appeared in the doorway. Dad? Can I show you something? We followed him upstairs to the guest room. His room now, I supposed. He pulled a shoebox from under the bed, opened it to reveal a stack of postcards. Mom sent these to Grandma Helena, he said quietly. I found them when we were cleaning out our house after the funeral. They're from all over, places Mom said she was going for work. But the dates. I picked up one postcard. Postmark was from Las Vegas, dated during a time Celeste had claimed to be at a teaching conference in Boston. Another from Miami when she told us she was visiting old college friends in Seattle. She's been planning this for years, Grant whispered. Using my brothers, stealing money, setting up escape routes? Oliver's voice was small. Is that why she took Lucas? Because he's little and won't remember like I do. Question hung in the air like smoke. I watched Grant struggle for an answer, saw the same helplessness I'd felt my entire life dealing with Celeste. My phone buzzed again. This time a photo, Lucas eating ice cream, smiling at the camera. Behind him, just visible in a mirror's reflection, Marcus's distinctive tattoo on his forearm. They're taunting us, Grant said through clenched teeth. But I was looking at Oliver, at the way his shoulders hunched as he stared at the postcards. At how much he looked like me at that age, watching Celeste get away with everything while I picked up the pieces. No, I said, deleting the photo. They're trying to keep us dancing to their tune. But we're not playing anymore. I turned to Oliver. How would you feel about changing schools? Starting fresh. He looked up, hope flickering across his face. You mean? We move, I said firmly. All of us. Somewhere they won't expect. No more reacting to Celeste's games. No more letting her control our lives. Grant nodded slowly. She'll hate losing her audience. Good, I replied, pulling Oliver close. Because this isn't about her anymore. It's about protecting what's left of our family. For the first time in days, Oliver smiled. It wasn't much, just a small upturn of his lips, but it felt like a victory. A tiny step toward healing the wounds my sister seemed determined to keep reopening. The breaking point came 3 weeks after we decided to move. I was packing Mom's china, the set she'd left me in her will. The one thing Celeste had actually seemed hurt not to receive, when I heard the crash from upstairs. I found Oliver in my bedroom, surrounded by shattered glass and spilled water. Mom's antique perfume bottle, the last birthday gift she'd given me before she died, lay in pieces at his feet. I'm sorry, he whispered, tears already streaming. I was just trying to smell it. Like Grandma. Something inside me snapped. Not at Oliver, never at him, but at everything the broken bottle represented. Years of Celeste's chaos, Mom's enabling, the constant expectation that I would be the responsible one, the understanding one. The one who kept picking up the pieces. It's okay, I said, but my voice shook. Just go downstairs. Please. As I knelt to clean up the mess, my phone buzzed. Another photo, Lucas at what looked like a carnival, cotton candy in hand. The timestamp showed it was from today. Behind him, a sign for New Orleans French Quarter. I didn't delete this one. Instead, I forwarded it to Detective Martinez with a short message. They're getting careless. The doorbell rang just as I finished sweeping up the last shards. Through the window, I saw Grant's car in the driveway. But when I opened the door, it wasn't Grant standing there. It was Marcus. "Hey, sis-in-law," he said, that familiar Turner smile spreading across his face. "Mind if I come in?" I blocked the doorway with my body. "Oliver's here." "I know. That's why I came alone." He held up his hands, showing they were empty. "Just want to talk. About Lucas. About Celeste. Aunt Nora." Oliver called from behind me. "Who's at the—" I slammed the door in Marcus's face and locked it. "Oliver, go to Ava's room. Now. Call your father." Through the door, Marcus's voice carried. "She misses him, you know. Both of them. But she had her reasons for choosing Lucas. He's special. Like her." "Special how?" I called back, my hand already on my phone. "You really don't know?" He laughed. "All those times your mother covered for her. All those special doctors and alternative treatments. Did you never wonder what they were really for?" Pieces started falling into place. Celeste's erratic behavior. Her obsession with Lucas's unique way of seeing the world. The way Mom had always insisted Celeste just needed extra support to manage her gifts. "She's sick," I said flatly. "And now she's making Lucas sick too." Sick is such an ugly word. I prefer enlightened. But hey, believe what you want. Just know this, we're taking Oliver too. Soon. Celeste says he has the potential, just needs the right guidance. I heard Oliver's muffled sob from upstairs, followed by Ava's voice telling him to hide in her closet. My hand tightened around my phone. "If you come near my nephew again," I said through clenched teeth, "I will burn your whole world down. And unlike Celeste, I don't make threats I can't follow through on." "Funny," Marcus replied, his voice dropping to a whisper. "That's exactly what your mother said right before she died. Right before Celeste convinced her to change that will. Wonder what else she convinced her of in those final days." The implication hit me like ice water. "You're lying." "Am I?" Ask Oliver about the pills he found in Celeste's bag. Ask him what Grandma looked like that last night, when Celeste insisted on being alone with her. His footsteps retreated down the porch steps. "But do it quick. Clock's ticking, sis-in-law." I waited until I heard his car pull away before racing upstairs. Found Oliver curled up in Ava's closet, clutching his phone. "Dad's coming," he whispered. Did you know that was Uncle Marcus?" I pulled him close, feeling him tremble. "Oliver, those pills you found in your mom's bag, what did they look like?" He described them perfectly. The same pills that had been missing from Mom's bedside table after she died. The death that everyone had called natural causes. Until now. Detective Martinez set the evidence bag on his desk, Mom's pill bottle, retrieved from where Oliver had hidden it in his shoebox of postcards. "The autopsy was inconclusive," he said. "Even if we prove these were in Celeste's possession, we can't prove she killed our mother," I cut in, my voice hollow. "And now she's after Oliver. We don't know that for certain." He leaned forward. "But there's something else. The bank robberies? They weren't random. Each one targeted safety deposit boxes belonging to former patients of a Dr. Samuel Chen. Mom's psychiatrist," I whispered. "The one who treated Celeste when we were teenagers. And Lucas now, apparently." He slid a file across the desk. "Dr. Chin specialized in children with supposed supernatural abilities. Your mother consulted him about Celeste for years." The file contained photographs. Celeste as a teenager, surrounded by strange equipment. Lucas in similar setups dated just months ago. Notes about enhanced perception and unique neural patterns. My phone buzzed. Celeste, remember when Mom said I was special? She was right. Lucas is too. Oliver could be if you'd just let him go. Another message followed immediately. Check your email. I did. There was a video attachment. With trembling fingers, I pressed play. It showed Mom in her hospital bed, pale and weak. Celeste's voice came from behind the camera. Tell Nora what you told me. About the money. I was wrong, Mom whispered. Celeste needs it more. The inheritance, the house. She has special needs. Nora will understand. She always understands. The video ended. Martinez watched me carefully. That was filmed the night before your mother died. She was drugged, I said. Confused. Celeste manipulated her, just like she's trying to manipulate Oliver now. Speaking of Oliver, Martinez hesitated. We got a hit on facial recognition. He was spotted at a bus station in Baton Rouge this morning. My heart stopped. That's impossible. He's at school. I dropped him off myself, but when I called the school, Oliver hadn't shown up for class. His backpack was gone from its usual spot by the door at home. In its place was a note in his careful handwriting. Aunt Nora, Mom says Lucas needs me. She says we're both special like her, and you'll try to stop us from being who we really are. I'm sorry about Grandma's perfume bottle. I'm sorry about everything. I sank onto the couch, the note crumpling in my fist. All this time, I'd been so focused on protecting Oliver from Celeste that I hadn't seen how she was poisoning his mind from afar. Just like she'd poisoned Mom. My phone buzzed again. A photo of Oliver and Lucas together, both smiling, somewhere I didn't recognize. Celeste's message followed. They're where they belong now. With someone who understands them. Who won't try to make them normal. We can track the phone, Martinez said, but I barely heard him. Because behind the boys in the photo was a familiar piece of furniture, Mom's antique writing desk. The one that had disappeared from her house right after she died. The one containing decades of family documents, medical records, and financial information. She's at Mom's lake house, I realized. The one Mom sold right before she got sick. Celeste must have bought it through a shell company. We'll get a warrant. There's no time. I grabbed my keys. She won't stay there long. And if she gets Oliver into Dr. Chen's program. Dr. Caldwell. Martinez's voice stopped me at the door. If what you're saying about your mother is true, your sister is dangerous. Let us handle this. But I was already walking away. Because he didn't understand. Celeste wasn't just dangerous, she was desperate. And desperate people would do anything to protect their delusions. I would know. After all, I'd spent my whole life desperately believing I could save her. This time, though, I wasn't going to save Celeste. I was going to stop her. The lake house looked exactly as I remembered, except for the fresh tire tracks in the gravel driveway. Mom's old wind chimes still hung from the porch, their gentle tinkling at odds with the tension in the air. I found them in the sunroom. Oliver and Lucas sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by papers covered in strange symbols. Celeste stood at Mom's writing desk, sorting through files. I wondered how long it would take you, she said without turning around. Oliver, take your brother upstairs. They're not going anywhere. I stepped into the room. It's over, Celeste. Detective Martinez is on his way with a warrant. She finally turned, and I barely recognized her. Her eyes had that familiar fevered gleam, but there was something else there now, something cold and calculating that hadn't been there before. You never understood, did you? She gestured to the papers around the boys. Mom knew. She saw our potential. Why do you think she spent all that money on Dr. Chen's treatments? She enabled your delusions because it was easier than getting you real help. Delusions? Celeste left. Oliver, show your aunt what you can do. Before I could stop him, Oliver closed his eyes in concentration. The wind chimes outside went silent. Then, one by one, the papers around him began to rise into the air. Jesus Christ, I whispered. What did you do to him? I helped him embrace who he is. Who we all are. She moved toward Lucas, who was watching the floating papers with wide eyes. Mom tried to suppress my abilities because of you. Your jealousy, your concerns. But she understood in the end. That's why she changed the will. After you drugged her, I said flatly. Just like you're drugging them. Papers dropped suddenly as Oliver's head snapped up. Mom? What's she talking about? Celeste's face hardened. Don't listen to her. She's trying to confuse you just like she confused Grandma. The pills in your bag, Oliver said slowly. The ones like Grandma's. They're medicine, Celeste snapped. To help you focus your abilities. Lucas takes them too, don't you, sweetie? But Lucas was staring at the fallen papers, thumb in mouth, tears rolling down his cheeks. They make my head hurt, he whispered. Something shifted in Oliver's expression. He stood up, moving away from the scattered papers. You said Grandma understood at the end. But she was scared. I heard her crying that night. Oliver, she begged you to stop. To let her sleep. His voice cracked. I didn't understand then, but you killed her, didn't you? Temperature in the room seemed to drop. Celeste's hand moved toward her pocket. Don't, I warned, but she was already pulling out a small bottle. 1 dose, she said, her voice eerily calm. That's all it takes to unlock their potential. To make them understand. She uncapped the bottle. Lucas, come here. No. Oliver grabbed his brother's hand. Aunt Nora, please. I lunged forward just as Celeste reached for Lucas. We collided hard, the bottle flying from her hand and shattering against the desk. Pills scattered across the floor. Run! I shouted to the boys. Outside now. They bolted, but as I tried to follow, Celeste grabbed my hair, yanking me back. You always ruin everything, she snarled. Just like you ruined things with Mom. We grappled, crashing into the desk. Papers went flying, medical records, bank statements, and underneath them all, a handwritten letter in Mom's shaky script. My dearest Nora, I'm so sorry. I should have protected you both better. Celeste needs help I can't give her anymore. Don't let her. The rest was illegible, smeared with what looked like tears or spilled water. Celeste saw it too. For a moment, she froze, something like recognition flickering across her face. That's when we heard the sirens. It's not too late, I said quietly. Get help. Real help. For the boys' sake. She looked at me for a long moment, tears filling her eyes. Then she smiled, that same sweet smile she'd used to charm our mother, our teachers, everyone who'd ever tried to help her. You're right, she whispered. I'm sorry. Then she shoved me hard against the desk and ran. By the time I recovered my balance, she was gone. But this time she'd left something behind. Her children. And the truth. 6 months after Celeste disappeared, I stood in my backyard watching Oliver teach Lucas how to pitch a baseball. The younger boy's thumb hadn't found its way to his mouth in weeks, and Oliver's nightmares had finally begun to fade. He's getting better at that, Grant said, joining me on the patio. We'd fallen into an unexpected co-parenting rhythm, sharing custody of both boys while the police continued their search for Celeste. The therapist says they both are. I handed him a coffee. Oliver asked about her yesterday. First time in months. Grant nodded, watching Lucas miss another catch. And he wanted to know if she was sick like Mom said or bad like the police think. I sighed. I told him sometimes people can be both. The investigation had revealed more than we'd expected. Dr. Chen's treatment program was under federal investigation for illegal drug trials. Mom's autopsy had been reopened, though the results were still inconclusive. And Celeste's trail led to a dozen different cities. each with its own string of crimes and confused victims who remembered a charming woman who seemed to know things she shouldn't. "Aunt Nora," Oliver called out. "Watch this." He threw the ball high, and this time Lucas caught it cleanly. The boy's face lit up with genuine pride. No supernatural theatrics needed. Later that evening, as I helped Oliver with his homework, he pulled something from his backpack, a worn envelope I recognized from Mom's writing desk. "I found this when we were packing up the lake house," he said quietly. "I wasn't sure if I should show you, but..." Inside was a letter dated 3 days before Mom died. "My dearest Nora, by the time you read this, I fear it will be too late for me. But perhaps not too late for Celeste or her boys. I enabled her for too long, believing love meant protecting her from consequences. I was wrong. You were always the strong one, not because you were perfect, but because you faced your imperfections with grace. I'm sorry I didn't tell you more often how proud I was of that strength. Take care of them, Nora. Not like I did, but like you would have done all along. With love and regret, Mom." "There's something else," Oliver said, pulling out a small notebook. "Grandma's diary. She wrote about Mom's abilities, about how she thought they were real at first, but then realized." "Realized what?" "That Mom believed in them so much she made other people believe too, like she did with me in the papers." He looked down. "I can't really make things float, can I?" I pulled him close. "No, honey. But you can do something more important. You can see the truth, even when it's hard." My phone buzzed, another unknown number. But this time, instead of photos or threats, there was just a short message. "You were right. Getting help. Don't look for me. Take care of my boys better than she took care of us." I showed Grant the message later, after the boys were asleep. "Think it's really her?" he asked. "Does it matter?" I watched Oliver and Lucas through the window, peaceful in their shared bedroom. They're where they need to be now. And you? Are you where you need to be? I thought about Mom's letter, about Celeste's message, about all the years I'd spent trying to fix a family that was broken long before I understood why. "I'm exactly where I should have been all along," I said. "Right here." That night, I dreamed of wind chimes and floating papers, of pills that promised miracles and letters that spoke hard truths. But when I woke, the only magic I needed was the sound of children laughing downstairs, the smell of breakfast cooking, and the simple miracle of a family healing, not through supernatural powers or dramatic gestures, but through the quiet strength of choosing love over fear, truth over delusion, and forgiveness over revenge. Even if some of that forgiveness would always remain a work in progress,